What's going on, everybody? Welcome back. We got another skate hacks video today, and we're going over the 360 shove it. Now, the only reason that I haven't done this video earlier is because some people wouldn't call my three shove a three shove. They would call it an impossible. But whatever, I'm not going to get into this argument. But if you want to learn how to do this trick, regardless of what it's called, if you want to do it the way I'm doing it here, then watch this tutorial. If not, then go elsewhere, find another three shove tutorial. Now, there's a reason why I like doing three shoves with the back foot, whipping it around, and that's because when you do it the other way with the front foot just kind of staying on the board the whole time and just sort of like dangling out the back foot, it looks cool, but it doesn't feel so stable. I don't really like the way it feels, and it's easier to land primo when you do it this way. It's just kind of frustrating, and I don't really like dealing with that, especially when you're trying to do it off a gap or stair set. Most people, when they do three shoves on stairs and gaps and whatnot, they kind of do the back foot whip. They got the back foot whip going on. So that's why I do it the way I do it. If you want to call it impossible, go ahead. Whatever, three shove impossible. I'm going to give my tips on how to three shove or impossible. So this is how I set up for it. I set up pretty much like a tray flip. A lot of tricks I'll set up similar to a tray flip. You got those toes hanging off in the back, and I think that's the most important part of this trick, to have those toes hanging off. So you're going to set up like a tray flip, and when you scoop, you're going to scoop, and since you're going to whip the back foot around, the back foot is what's going to be guiding the board around the whole entire time. Now, your back foot isn't necessarily going to stay on the board the whole time. As you can see here, my back foot, like, it kind of guides it around, but it's not like stuck to the board the whole time. It may come off the board a little bit, but it's basically just whipping the board around, guiding it around. So the reason why I think it's important to have your back foot in the scooping position with the toes hanging off is because you want to make sure those toes are guiding the board around the entire way. Because when you set up to three shove without your toes hanging off like this, it becomes harder to guide the board around. You might lose track of it and slip off, or you might end up flipping the board, which is something you don't want, right? Because it's easy to land primo on the three shoves. It's easy to land primo or land with the board upside down. And so to avoid that, it's best to get that grip with the toes hanging off. If you can catch my drift here, you want to get that grip with the toes. You want to scoop it, and when it comes around at 90 degrees, once it's finished, the board's halfway finished spinning around, you want to make sure that those toes are still peeping off the side of the board, as you can see here. It's not going to be like this all the time, but this is a good rule of thumb to make sure that you're not going to land primo. I think that's the main overall problem with three shoves. Everyone lands primo, or they land upside down, and it's important to keep the board stable so that you land on it properly without flipping it. So I think you're more likely to have the board flip when you don't have those toes hanging off, because the toes are what just kind of cup around the board, and it just guides it nicely, and you can make sure you land on it flat. So I think that's a big issue with the three shove. Overall, I think it's a pretty easy trick to do. There's not too much else to it. I feel that when you scoop, you're not going to scoop and then bring the back foot out like a tray flip. You're going to scoop and continue the board moving in that motion, and what helps move the board in that motion and guide it around is when you really have those toes hanging off. That really gives you some leverage. So I think that's the most important part with a three shove. So you can try this on flat ground. Just put your front foot on the ground and put your back foot on the board and just scoop it and whip it around, and just keep practicing that until you have a good feel for the whip of a three shove, because that's the gist of it pretty much. The front foot is just going to move out of the way. You don't have to do too much with the front foot. So it also helps to catch the three shove around the 270 degree point, if you know what I'm saying here, before it reaches the full 360 degree turn. That's kind of around the point which I catch it, and I make sure that the back foot is solid on the board again, so that it's not going to go primo or whatever. By the time it reaches the 270 point, you want to have that back foot solid on the board again. So you helped guide it around, and you want to make sure that that back foot is solid, and it's just gripping the board so that you can land normally without having to worry about primo. So that's my overall tip for a 3 shove. There's not much to it. You just got to practice that whipping motion. Try to get the toes hanging off. Just practice, practice, practice. So those are my tips on 3 shoves. Comment down below for any future suggestions on skate hacks videos. See you guys next time.